Hi writers, and welcome to my lesson on dialogue. So today I'm going to talk about how you can really make your characters come off the page and make them feel a lot more realistic just by doing a few simple things with your dialogue. So I'm going to start, I don't really like rules generally, but I am going to start with some rules and you'll see my point in a minute. So Nicola's 3 rules of dialogue, and they are subtext, subtext, subtext. I think you're getting my point. But also conflict, but definitely subtext. Now, I'm oversimplifying a bit, but the point is that your dialogue should be doing more than one job. There are 2 things to think about. The dialogue really comes off the page when it's complex, when the reader has to think about it a little bit, when it doesn't feel like 2 people either telling each other things they already know or telling each other things that are very straightforward, very easy to understand. They're not hiding anything. Well, that's not how people speak. When I speak to you or we speak to each other, like often I won't directly say what I want or what I think, and I'll leave you to fill in the blanks and work it out. So I'm going to give you an example of how this works in real life. I suspect this is a conversation that many of you will have had in your lives. I know I have a number of times. So this conversation. What's wrong? He said. Nothing. Well, we all know that that doesn't mean that nothing is actually wrong. And we all know that we'd be very daft if we had that conversation with a loved one and we left it at that and assumed that they really meant nothing when they said nothing. So what things could we mean when we have this conversation? Well, when we're asking, we know something's wrong. We can feel it. We can sense it. So these are the kind of things that are going through our heads. We don't know what to say. We feel guilty. Have we done something wrong? We know you're in a bad mood. What's going on? It feels weird. We're a bit scared, and that's why we're asking the question. We want to ask something, but we don't know what it is. Okay. So when we say nothing, we may mean nothing. I mean, I'd suggest that's fairly rare, but we may mean nothing's wrong. But usually something is definitely wrong. We might not know what it is. We're just feeling a little bit weird. We're not sure. We might not want to talk about it. Maybe we don't even want to think about it. Maybe we just don't want to make it that easy for the person that we're talking to. But there's no doubt about it that despite the fact there's only 3 words actually being said here, we've got a very layered and complicated conversation. So this is what I mean by subtext. And you'll notice also that there's a bit of conflict here. We know that something is wrong. And one of the reasons we might say nothing, if I say something now, I might say something I regret. Okay. Another thing that I think goes wrong in beginning fiction often is dialogue attribution. So I've got a little example that I wrote for you here. It's not the most interesting interaction between 2 people in the world ever, but let's have a quick look at it. People seem to be taught to use their full vocabulary at school, including some very odd verb choices and annoying adverbs in the dialogue text. She intoned infuriatedly. In my opinion, the word said is underrated. Quite a mouthful, some of these. He agreed happily. Yes, she shouted. Sometimes the attributions feel well overdramatic. In fact, he coughed. Sometimes they aren't even words that describe speaking at all. Yes, she whispered. And sometimes they attract attention because they feel completely wrong for the conversation. So, these colourful attributions, if you are learning at school and you're doing a test, maybe they're the right thing to write down. But when it comes to what the reader is going to enjoy reading, they are not the right way to do this. And in my opinion, the right way to do this is with a very simple word, said. So, in my opinion, there's not enough said. There is usually in published fiction because published writers usually get their head around this. But often in beginning fiction, when people are starting out, there's just not enough said used in dialogue attribution. I don't mind asked or replied or even shouted or whispered if it's used sparingly and in the right context, but said can do a lot of this work, so try and use said a bit more, or even miss out the attribution altogether. You'll notice that when I had the reply, nothing, there was no attribution, but we knew it was somebody else speaking. So often it's very clear from this layout of the page that someone else has said something. You might not even need a dialogue attribution. So a couple of examples from my work. I mean, I don't tend to do that stuff with attribution, but I do always need to work on the context in my dialogue. So here's some examples. I've got 2 characters talking. This is in my current work in progress, which is called Dead Flowers. We've got Harry and Angela talking to each other. They're sitting in a Unitarian church, and Harry is saying, "Trust me, I swear it on the Holy Bible," but he's not even holding a Bible, as Angela points out. So Right, so I read this through and thought about how I could edit it and make it better, and my verdict on it was there's not nearly enough subtext. They're just being a little bit too straightforward with each other. So I've re-edited it. So this is my rewrite. So we've got Harry, you can trust me, he said, placing his hand on the leather. Is that what he means? Can she really trust him? I mean, if somebody tells you they can trust you, should you believe them? He's saying, do as you're told, perhaps. And he swears it on the Holy Bible. Well, he knows it's not a Bible, it's a missal. And he's saying, look over there, laugh, let me distract you. Here. Angela's saying, oh, okay, you're funny. That's not a Bible. And then he says, I'll treat you like a princess. Now, he happens to know that Angela has a really quite horrible ex-husband, actually. So he's saying, I'm going to treat you better than that. That's what he's really saying here. That's the subtext of this conversation. And she's not sure. So he's saying, come on, I am. And finally she concedes, well, you can't be much worse. Well, you can probably guess where this is going. She's going to find out just how much worse he can be. Okay, so that is Angela and Harry. This is from the same book, but it's a different character. I've got 2 different timelines. So this is a modern character, whereas Angela and Harry are back in the 1960s. This is contemporary. So this time we've got a character talking. He's saying, who knows, maybe I'll stay in Nottingham. And I've mentioned that there's an air of between the lines about the way he was speaking. So my verdict on this was he was too on the nose about having subtext. Yeah, a bit meta, but there you go. So I've reworked this one as well. Let's see where I went with it. So this time he just says, who knows, maybe I'll just stay. I've always had a soft spot for Nottingham. And then Sian just shrugs. We don't get any of that interior stuff that's giving too much away. And then look what I did here. What? He said. Nothing. Well, we all know that's much more complicated than it appears on the page.